What's up, guys, and welcome to Friday Flight's Mosaic IPA edition. Oh, with a side of RGB memory. Back at Computex, Patriot introduced their new RGB series of their Viper memory. And if ever there's been a RAM kit designed with gamers in mind, it's probably this one. It checks literally every single gamer aesthetic box there is. Angular heatsinks, giant snakehead, RGB, and that's not a knock on this kit at all. I honestly think they look fantastic. But looks mean nothing if a product doesn't perform well. So, are these nothing more than just a pretty face? Spoiler alert, the Viper 3200 kit performs just as well as it looks, but we'll get to those metrics in just a few minutes. Opening up the box reveals the dual-channel 8GB DIMMs, some Viper stickers, instructions to download the Viper RGB software from their website, and that's about it. The Viper memory definitely has a premium feel to it, and the aluminum heatsinks are both sturdy and very good looking with the massive Viper logo on the side. They also don't tend to collect oils or fingerprints from your hands or smudge up like some other kits that are out there. The RGB channel along the top is not flat, but pokes up on either end like a pair of fangs, and the Viper name sits right front and center on the top. Installation was a breeze, despite these DIMMs feeling slightly thicker than normal, although I did test installing these side by side with no clearance issues at all. Powering on the system, and we were immediately met with a rainbow-inspired light show at its default settings. So, first things first, we're definitely going to want to get that RGB software installed and customize the lighting to my build, as the world of Dishonored was filled with rat excrement, not unicorn. Out of the box, Patriot recommends downloading their Viper RGB software to customize your lighting profiles, or you can use nearly any motherboard manufacturer's own suite to control them. This includes MSI's Mystic Light, Gigabyte RGB Fusion, Asus AuraSync, and ASRock Polychrome. As my Dishonored case mod has an EVGA Z370 for the Win motherboard, I opted for the Viper software, and was actually pleasantly surprised with both the level of customization available and how simple the software was to use. You can keep 5 profiles saved with your favorite lighting effects, and while you're limited to only around 7 preset animations, you do have full control over color, lighting zones, and speed, allowing you to design quite a few very good looking effects. Now, RGB memory is famous for falling out of sync when it comes to RGB effects, so how did the Vipers fare? Both excellent and meh. While the RAM does remember what lighting effect you were using when you shut off the computer or close out the software, within a few minutes the effect kind of goes all over the place. And out-of-sync RGB is usually bad RGB. I am happy to report though that as long as the Viper RGB software is running, the RAM stayed perfectly in time, never losing sync at all. Now, as good as the software is, it could be a little bit cleaner. Specifically, I'd like an option to boot with Windows automatically, as right now I have to open the application every single time I boot Windows to get my memory to sync the RGB effect. Also, being able to minimize the system tray when not in use, rather than just down as an open application on the taskbar. I did also test the memory on a Gigabyte B360M DS3H motherboard, which does support Gigabyte RGB Fusion. But sadly, even with a clean Windows build and only the RGB Fusion software installed, I could not get it to recognize the RGB memory. Installing the Viper software here again worked, but you can typically only have one RGB software suite installed at a time, so using Fusion for the rest of the RGB in my build would not have been an option. It may be compatible with RGB software out there, and maybe I was doing something wrong, but I could not make it work in my testing. On to performance! Our test bed again is an EVGA Z370 for the Win motherboard running an Intel Core i7-8700K along with our Patriot Viper 16GB dual channel kit running at 3200 MHz with 16-18-18-36 timing under XMP 2.0. Benchmarking, I went pretty light on this time around, running only IDA64's built-in memory test to verify everything was running up to where it should be running with the RAM. And in this case, I did test it against a 16GB dual-channel kit of Kingston Value RAM running at 2400 MHz. Stock speeds, that being 2133 MHz according to DDR4 spec, allows for transfer speeds on DDR4 of up to 32,000 megabytes per second. And on our 2400 MHz value RAM, that's exactly where the numbers put us. So 32 gigabytes per second, that's great. Why do I need faster memory? Honestly, when it comes to Intel systems, outside of a few specific games, speed doesn't make much of a difference in terms of increasing your average FPS. And I know, controversial statement there. And yes, speed certainly does matter when it comes to Ryzen systems, as Infinity Fabric does depend on that raw speed. But for Intel systems, latency is what will improve your game experience. And I am very happy to say, those 16-18-18-36 timings on the Viper RGBs scored very well, measuring a full 29% faster than the Kingstons. I did try to overclock the memory as well, but unfortunately, Viper seems to have gotten every bit they could out of this memory without overvolting it. I had absolutely zero luck of getting the timings any tighter. And while I was able to post at 3400 MHz, it didn't seem to have any appreciable effect. The good news is, though, you're getting every last bit of that advertised 3200 MHz speed. So there you go, one dashingly good looking kit of RGB memory from Patriot Viper. The software works great, the RAM looks even better, and the lights stay synchronized, a strangely rare trick in the world of RGB memory these days. And as far as performance goes, they measure exactly where they should, just no higher than that. And honestly, at $175 for a 16GB dual channel kit of 3200 MHz memory, they're priced right around their non-RGB counterparts. I'd say if you're looking for a no-fuss RGB kit to spice up your build, you certainly can't go wrong here. But what do you guys think? Is a couple extra bucks worth it for a very good kit of gaming memory to throw RGB on top? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and like the video on your way down there. If you are interested in financially backing the channel, consider looking me up on Patreon with the link down in the video description. You'll get access to my exclusive Discord server where you can chat with myself and the other hosts from Talking Heads, where we talk about everything from current events and PC building advice to homebrewing and mixology. That is going to do it for me, guys, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.